Oh my god, they killed my cat! They killed my cat! Oh my god! Now they're all gonna have to die. Hey everybody, Sexy Matt the Pharaoh Wizard here. Now it's time to talk John Wick Chapter 2. Yes, the sequel to the sleeper hit John Wick is here. Let's talk about it. Before I get into the new movie, I was a little bit slow to jump on the John Wick train, as it were. It came out roughly about the same time as Jack Reacher, and I thought we were just getting into this new thing where out-of-date, tired action stars are trying to do senseless action movies, and I was already bored by it just by the titles of the movies. But everyone kept bugging me, you gotta see John Wick, you gotta see John Wick, go see John Wick. And I finally saw it, even though Keanu's not one of my favorite guys, but I saw it, and I quite enjoyed it, actually. Very well done action movie, great action scenes, great action sets, and actually a really good story to go along with it. So John Wick Chapter 1 is an A+ in my book. So now we get the sequel, Chapter 2, so let's talk about it. John Wick Chapter 2 is brought to us from Chad Stahelski, I think that's how you say it, who directed the first John Wick movie and is actually more known as a stuntman rather than a director or writer or anything. So that explains, the crazy awesome action scenes in these movies. So the overall plot of John Wick Chapter 2 is it takes place immediately after the first one. And being that John Wick came out of retirement, had this big crazy spree, it inspired one of his former, I guess you can say, contacts, friends, someone else within this underground community to call him in for a favor. And it's not a favor he can refuse, and it's also a favor that will kind of kick the hornet's nest that is this underground assassin gangster world that's going on. And without any spoilers, that's the general plot of John Wick Chapter 2. So let's talk about the characters that we have. So of course we got the titular John Wick, played by Keanu Reeves. Whoa! And yes, I'll be doing that joke a few times. So he does a great job. They use Keanu in his most effective, which is less lines, more action. So he does a really good job, so you don't get a lot of this.
I've seen many strange things already. Bloody wolves chasing me through some blue inferno.
It's more just him kicking ass. It's a lot of the same from the first movie, but he still brings that intensity and just does a fantastic job. I really enjoy what Keanu does with this character. He's like a force of nature. They call him the boogeyman in this movie, and rightfully so. He's just the boogeyman. He is just a force of violence and just a force of nature out to destroy everything, and just does a great job, so thumbs up there. So of course we have I guess you can call him the antagonist, because he's not really the villain. He's who John Wick wants to get revenge on, and that is Santonio D'Antonio, who's played by Italian actor Riccardo Scarmonso. Sorry, I butchered your name. I tried to look at his IMDb, and it's not even in English, so I haven't seen him in anything. But he's a really good upgrade from Theon from the previous movie. Theon wasn't much of an antagonist, but he was the end goal, like the end boss or whatever. He was who John wanted to get revenge on. Santonio in this movie is a lot more menacing. Again, he is just pulling the strings, and he's who John Wick's going after. But he's a much more upgraded, a lot sleazier, a lot creepier. Just an all-around, like I said, it's just an upgrade from the previous movie and done really well. I enjoyed what he did, so fantastic. So there's not a lot of characters to talk about. Of course, you get some returning characters and a lot of side characters that help him out, but no one really stuck out. But of course, I got to talk about Larry Fishburne, who we saw in the credits, so you know it's Neo and Morpheus teaming back up again.
Whoa.
And so Larry plays the Bowery King, which I don't want to get into spoilers, so I won't talk too much about him, but he's basically another introduction into another part of this underground world that we've been introduced to. Of course, if you've seen the first one, you know there's like this whole world going on that's like this underground assassin gangster world, and that's one thing I really enjoyed about this first movie is it leaves a lot to the imagination of what's going on in this world and just adds little bits and pieces here and there. So the Bowery King that Larry plays is another introduction to another part of that. He did a great job and had a fun time with it, but honestly, it wasn't anything that only Lawrence Fishburne can do. It could have been done by anybody. They obviously got him for the Matrix attachment, it seemed. It was a very small part. Again, could have gone to anybody, but, you know, not too upset. The only other character that really stuck out to me is Ares, played by Orange is the New Black's Ruby Rose, who is kind of like Santino's right-hand woman, like another assassin. And she's deaf, so all her dialogue is brought to us, you know, from signing, and she does a fantastic job. She's creepy, she's scary, she's sexy, she's everything rolled into one, and she really stood out to me and was a great character. Much enjoyed her character. So what worked well about John Wick Chapter 2? The first thing really you gotta ask is how does it work as a sequel? Because a sleeper hit like this, something that's not necessarily big in theaters, but gets a movie, but upon release and, you know, a lot of talk and hearsay becomes a big thing. They kind of end up going down the route of, you know, Hangover Part 2, where it's literally the same movie over again. Does John Wick Chapter 2 do that? Not really. There are some overlapping occurrences and things that happen, but I think this works well as a sequel. It expands on this universe we've been given, and doesn't just do the same thing over again. It is, of course, a lot of action like the previous movie, but it's different, and it's a little bit more at stake, and again, just introduces more of this world and expands this universe. So as a sequel, I think it works really well, and overall is a very solid follow-up to John Wick. Now, what worked really well, of course, being John Wick, is that it's an action movie, and the action is fantastic. Of course, the director's a stuntman, but yeah, so many great action scenes. I didn't do like really a count, but one complaint of a lot of action movies is that they're always shooting their guns without any use of bullets, or, you know, they never seem to run out of bullets, things like that. This one really felt like he had clips that had a limited amount, and he had to switch clips, and he'd run out of bullets, and I think they really took an account of the bullet count and did a solid job with that. There's a scene where he's given a gun with only 7 bullets, and they make a big deal of saying it's only got 7 bullets. And so then you see him run into a room and just start firing at people, and like I was like, oh, here we go again. But then he runs out of bullets and had to scramble, and I think it's just done really solid. A lot of the martial arts is fantastic. It's all just really top-notch. It's what was done in the first movie, but definitely expanded more, which then led to some really tense moments. Again, don't gonna get into specifics, but they do a lot more in the open public, which led to some more tense moments because they can't, you know, expose themselves, but, you know, they got to kill a guy. So that was just done really well. Really much enjoyed that. And like I said, they expanded on this underground a lot and really made it interesting, added some little new elements of it. You know, they go to Europe and you see how the European side of this underground works, and a lot of cool stuff like that. So I really enjoyed what they expanded on and what they did with this, you know, franchise. So a lot of people say, you know, this is a big, dumb action movie. Just go in thinking it's an action movie and forget about it and, you know, just enjoy the action. But honestly, I think there's a little bit more to it. And maybe I'm reading too much into John Wick and John Wick Chapter 2, but here's kind of a little theory I had, and I really liked it, is that in the first movie, it's all about grieving. And yeah, this bad thing happens to him. His wife dies, and then someone comes in and kills his dog and steals his car. But that wouldn't send most of us out on a murderous rampage. So I felt it was a lot like a grieving process for John Wick, where a lot of people, when they go into grieving, they go into what they know and just really dive right into that. They go into riding or fixing cars or whatever. Or in John Wick's, life as an assassin, he goes into killing people. And I think there's a lot of subtext in the first movie about grieving and people's grieving process, things like that. Again, maybe reading too much into it, but that's what I thought. And in this movie, it's a lot of subtext about how if you leave a violent life, can you leave a violent life? You've spent your whole life killing everybody. Can you just stop? And it leaves a lot for John Wick to really think about and ponder in a lot of ways, because how quickly did he go from being retired to just killing everybody in the first movie? And that's something like, that's not normal. And this is supposed to be kind of a realistic world, so, what does that say about him if he's able to just jump right back into that violence, and can he ever truly give this violence up? And that's some really cool, interesting subtext to read into, and I found it very interesting, just this really awesome kind of underlayer on top of all this great action. So that's something I enjoyed a lot. Of course, no movie is perfect, so where does John Wick Chapter 2 fail? So the first thing I noticed was a lack of cars. The first movie, he had his famous Mustang, and then he gets another sweet muscle car, I forget which it is, when he goes on his killing spree. And there's a lot of cars, a lot of car battles, things with cars, lots of cars. This one, there's really only a scene in the beginning dealing with cars, and then there's really no cars at all. It's just kind of running. So that was something, if you're going into this looking for some cool cars, you're going to be disappointed. There's really no cars in this movie.
Wow.
And like I said before, there is some overlapping from things they did in the first movie. There's a point at the beginning where they almost start doing the exact movie again. And I don't know if that was on purpose to kind of play with your expectations or what. But something happens in the beginning, like, oh, here we go again. It's going to be the same thing. Of course, then it takes a lot more turns and a lot of twists in this movie. But that was definitely like, oh. So it was a nice surprise, but there are a lot of things that, touch on that are done again. So, they could have separated themselves from the first movie a little bit more, but overall wasn't too bad. But it's just something I noticed. No spoilers in this section, but how it ended, which I won't get into specifics, I was a little disappointed with how it ended. Just something I really didn't enjoy, and I'll get more into in spoilers. But I wasn't feeling the ending very much, personally. That being said, let's actually get into spoilers. So we'll throw up the spoiler signs and go on and click on Keanu to skip past my spoilers into the wrap-up, but it's spoiler time. So the ending, like I was talking about, is wide open for a sequel. It definitely really hinted at the next movie. And I didn't care for that. The first movie was a very single encapsulated movie. They didn't know they were going to get a sequel, so they just made a single movie, which is something we don't see a lot these days. And the fact that they were able to take that encapsulated movie and then expand on it and make a sequel was really cool and interesting, and something they used to do a lot. But nowadays, everyone's always planning out these big franchises, and the fact they left the ending open for another sequel is just like, oh, now it's just another franchise, series of movies. And so it's a little lackluster. I thought they could have just made this another encapsulated movie, and honestly, I thought they were going to kill John Wick, and that would have been a fantastic ending, a surprise, and very interesting. But of course, they left it open so they can make another sequel, so I was a little disappointed there. But yeah, I just didn't care for the ending. That's pretty much it for spoilers. I really don't have a lot to spoil in this. So let's wrap it up. So overall, this is a great continuation from what we were introduced to in John Wick Chapter 1. Expands on the universe and adds some new elements. It's got great action still, and just the upgrade to the antagonist was fantastic. If you like the first one, you're going to love this. It's just a fantastic sequel. It's not just the same thing over again. It expands and does more, and I really enjoyed that. So overall, my rating on this is going to be see it in theaters. Again, if you enjoyed the first one, you're going to love this one. Now, if you're not an action fan, you're not going to like this at all. This isn't going to be up your alley. But, for an action movie, it's fantastic. It has some great subtext going on, just a lot of layers when you really look at it, and it's just done really solid, really fantastic, and I wholeheartedly enjoyed this movie. So that was John Wick Chapter 2. I'm Sexy Matt the Pharaoh Wizard. Until next time, hold on to your hold slots.